Let's go.
What is up, guys? It's your friend, the Chris Donaldson here, and welcome back to the Chris Donaldson Project. The reason we call it a project is because we have some unfinished business to discuss. So whether you're joining us on YouTube, you're joining us on all of the various podcast apps, wherever you're listening, whether you're running, taking your morning exercise, you're in the car, you're walking the dog, I appreciate you guys very much. I'd like to take a moment to just acknowledge and thank everybody out there. It's funny the things that y'all notice, but one of the comments that I've gotten the most since the YouTube went up of episode 3 is that I was wearing a hat with no logo on it. And there was a reason for that. But in the meantime, before I could even get to the reason for that, there's been a little bit of a branding thing going on out there in the marketplace that I find really interesting. So for all of those that are wondering or have asked, the blank hat on my head has nothing to do with any of the commercials or the athletic brands or any of that stuff going on out there. It's actually a contest that we were going to talk about later. So for those of you that have asked, there's no reason to the hat other than we're still figuring out what we're going to put on these things. So let me make sure that I introduce my co-host behind the ones and the twos. Art, my man, how are you doing today? It's happy hour, so you must be doing good.
Yeah, I'm quite well.
He always comes in booming from the back end, doesn't he? So we're recording this on a Friday afternoon on what would usually be happy hour. It just shows you how we were scheduled to do this earlier in the day, and then all sorts of business things happen, which drives Art crazy, but it comes with the territory. Everything doesn't go exactly as planned. Look, in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to me, and I'm going to try to help give some tangible tactics on how to solve a common problem, and that is overcoming the struggle for confidence. There is something that I cannot tell you that I hear more than this, I guess, and that is the lack of confidence and people's lack of belief that they're going to be able to accomplish whatever it is that they want or something that they're about to do, and they're freaking out. Whether we're talking about a license exam here at one of our schools or we're talking about a sales presentation, look, I'm a public speaker for a living, and it's long been documented that public speaking is one of the greatest fears people have. And so I get asked all the time, where do you get your confidence, or where does this confidence come from? Well, everybody, I just want to be clear, struggles with confidence. So we're going to talk today a little bit about that and talk about overcoming that struggle for confidence. But before we do that, we got to do a couple of reviews of the week. So for those of you, we're only on episode 4. And so already I want to thank you guys again that are supporting us, that are subscribing to the brand new podcast, that are out there on all the various mediums. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So a couple of shout outs. First and foremost, to my man Hunter. I appreciate your review. You left a 5-star review, and he said, when Chris talks, I listen, and you should too. Everything he says is very valuable. You won't want to miss out. Well, Hunter, I agree. But my man, thank you so much for taking the time to listen and for hitting us up on iTunes. So shout out to you. I also want to give a thanks and a shout out to Rick, who emailed and said how much he was enjoying the new venture and has listened to them all. He likes the topics such as time blocking, 24-hour evaluation, so episode 3 that we talked about, and they get me to constantly reevaluate my situation along with nuggets to give agents and others that I consult with. So he's a leader. So Rick, thank you for sending your email, and thank you for your support. So we're only on episode 4. If you guys have been listening, make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you leave a review. Let us know you're out there, and maybe you'll get a shout out on the next episode. So without further ado, let's get into the topic of the day, because I want this podcast to be sort of a shorter, sweeter, motivational, something you can hit on your commute to work, because I want to talk about this struggle for confidence, because I think it's something that we can all identify. Whatever it is, wherever you can think about it, there's almost no one that I've ever known, whether they admit it or not, it's a different thing, but no one that I've ever known that hasn't entered some situation in some arena where they lacked a little bit of confidence. And I think that some more than most. And so the first thing I want to share with you guys is everybody feels that at some point in their life, at some point in their career. Everybody struggles for confidence at something. But more often than not, when we're talking about overcoming the struggle for confidence, it's usually because it's something new to you or uncomfortable to you. So I've got 3 things, 3 ways, 3 strategies that you can overcome that lack of confidence or your struggle for confidence. I think that it will really work for you. So the first one is simple. And you hear me say it all the time. And you've got the what do you call this, Art? A bracelet? What is it? A bracelet doesn't sound right. What would you call these things? Armband?
Sure. Wristband.
Wristband?
Yeah.
I wear this wristband all the time that says effort always wins. And so the number one way that I'm going to suggest that if you are lacking confidence, it likely means you're lacking preparation. There's a very close relationship between not being confident that you're going to be able to do something and not having prepared enough. So if we're talking about, for instance, that you are going to have to stand up in the boardroom at your company and give a presentation for the first time in front of 25 people that are going to be sitting there and listening to you, and maybe your department's budget depends on it, or whatever that case may be, and you've never had to do this before and you're lacking confidence, the number one way to get it is to prepare the heck out of that presentation and practice it, practice it, practice it. The first or second time you deliver it should not be in that boardroom in front of all of those people. So the number one way to overcome like a lack of confidence is generally you probably know that you need to prepare more. When it comes to athletics and athletes, the higher the level that you go and the higher the level of the competition, the more that you see that practice and preparation makes performing when the temperature is the hottest the easiest. So in other words, if you've ever competed in sports, and a lot of people have at some level, if you're an athlete out there, you know this, by practicing and preparing, it gives you the opportunity to perform at the highest possible level. You're going to be more nervous if you know you're not prepared. You're going to be more nervous if you didn't read the playbook. You're going to be more nervous before a test if you didn't study. So if you're lacking confidence about something that you're about to do, or definitely something that's new to you, the number one thing you need to do is put in the effort and prepare. I mean, I have made my living preparing adult students for license exams, and by and large, always the lack of confidence is simply lack of preparation. Because once you're prepared, there's nothing to be nervous about. Then you can be confident. And so if you've never done it before, practice, 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 get through the first one, and then you're going to get better and better and better. So confidence comes with preparation, and then it comes with doing it, right? So what you think, Art? You hear me preach that around here pretty often, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to speaking and getting in front of people and presentations. Listen, I had my first speech and my first class and my first, all of those things. We've all been there. And, I didn't take it for granted. I was nervous, but I was prepared, which helped me to be confident, which kind of led to the snowball effect of where I am today. So I think that from day one, preparation is one of the number one ways you can overcome that struggle. Number 2, and I think this one in the modern world is really important, and that is that you need to stop taking your self-esteem and your belief of what you can do from others. In other words, you've got to stop letting other people determine how confident you are in your ability. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. It always has been, but now with social media and the availability of communication, it's become amplified. My grandfather used to call this the cold water committee. And the cold water committee is a very obvious group of people in your life or person in your life or whatever it may be, family member. But what it is somebody that's going to throw cold water on your dreams, on your belief, on your goals, on whatever it is, like the ice bucket. The cold water committee. I always loved that in the way that he put that because it makes so much sense. In other words, if I let other people's opinion of me determine my own opinion of me, I'm always going to lack confidence because let me explain something to you. People are not positive by nature. And what I mean by that is the stuff you see and hear is not always going to be positive by nature. And sometimes the reason is because they lack confidence, and the only way that they can gain some is to tear you down. So you got to understand that in all honesty, you've got to shut people out sometimes in order to gain your own personal confidence. So for me, and just to give you a couple of examples, well, number one, you get to decide who you are and what you're going to accomplish, not other people. And one of the things that I could tell you is throughout the course of my career, and whether it's business or personal, the confidence and the struggle, it's a constant effort because when I enter into something new, it's the whole new, okay, here we go again. But the number one thing people cannot take away from me is my belief in me. And that comes from here. That comes from here. You can't have that. And so if you understand that your confidence, self-worth, self-esteem, belief that you're going to do something has to come from here, it changes the game. And let me explain one of the hardest ones to overcome, and that's the people that love you the most. And the reason is the people that love you the most, their love likely comes in the expression of protection. So a great example is mama may tell you not to go pursue that thing, or maybe you shouldn't do that, or all of that. And she doesn't mean that you can't. She's just naturally trying to protect you from that unknown thing out there so that you don't get disappointed. But guess what? That's love. Understand that, but you don't have to listen to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't. It's just a different form of expression. So guys, you've got to avoid the cold water committee because that will erode at your confidence. I mean, if I sat around and listened to every single one of my guy friends and all the jokes and all the things that we tell and the stories, and if I sat there and let that determine my own personal sense of self-worth, I would not have any confidence whatsoever. So that really leads me into the third point. And the third way that just today I'm going to tell you to overcome the struggle for confidence, and that's you've got to alter your perspective. You have got to look at things a little bit differently. And the reason is simple, because the lack of confidence is very closely related to fear. I mean, they're like really close together. So usually if you lack confidence in something, you're going to be afraid of it. And so what happens is you get worse and worse. It gets worse. It manifests itself. So I want to read you a quote real quick. And the quote is, and this is something that I've read quite often. It's highlighted. We're on YouTube here. You can see that this book I've highlighted and all of that. And it states that man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become the next moment. By the same token, every human being has the freedom to change at any instant. And that's by Viktor Frankl. I love that quote because that means that because you were born thinking and looking and acting a certain way doesn't mean you have to now. And your situation and your mindset, well, because I was raised in a certain household and they told me everything was one way and this way, that's the way it has to be. No, it doesn't. Right? Tony Robbins always talks about it starts with a decision. So if you're lacking confidence in something, then let's start with the first thing. You've got to decide that you're going to be better at it. You're going to do better at it. You can be great at it, whatever that it is. So let's talk about some it's that can be there, right? You're afraid. You're afraid. You are terrified of taking that exam. Okay, we'll never take it. Then what's going to happen? Never achieve. I am terrified. I'm terrified and scared of going on that sales presentation. Because what if that person asks me if this was my first one? Like I work with a lot of real estate agents, right? They get to sit in front of the seller And they're terrified. What if they ask me this or what if they ask me that? Well, you've got to alter your perspective. You've got to look at that as opportunity. And you've got to understand that when your mindset is, look at all that I could gain from this and not what you could lose. Because let me explain, what are you going to lose? What are you going to lose? You don't have the listing now. You don't have the girl now. Guys, if you're afraid to go talk to a girl, go talk to her. You don't have her now. You got to alter the way you look at things because that gets you moving forward. And so I love that quote because what you guys can decide right now, wherever you are, if you're running, you can stop and run in the different direction. If you're driving, you can turn the car around. Guys, if you're looking to the left, you can look to the right. I just don't understand why we decide, well, because my mind is this way now, that's the way it's going to be forever. No, that's called being stuck. And that's a different discussion for another day. So in review, by the way, when I get a little excited and a little enthused, it comes from a good place. And it comes from a place because I've been right where you are. Remember, we called this the project for a reason. I'm unfinished business. We have some unfinished business. We're human beings. And I've been through a lot of the same things that you guys have, still go through the same things that you guys have. But the one thing that you can never take from me is confidence because of these three things. Number one, if I'm going to be doing something new or if I'm lacking confidence in something, I'm going to work at it. That's number one. Practice, 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 right? Like if you don't feel good about the way you look, go exercise, get on a diet, do something about it. If you're not prepared or if don't feel like you're going to do well in this presentation or in this new venture or on this exam or on this phone call, then practice and prepare. That's number one. Number two, you have got to stop allowing others to determine your confidence level. That comes from the inside. Look, if you're in anything competitive, whether it's business or sports or anything in between, the guy's job on the other end is to tear you down so they can win. That's their job. So let's assume that's the case. Well, then confidence has to come within. So you got to stop listening to the cold water committee, no matter how close to you they are. And number three, you've got to alter your perspective. Just because you were raised one way or think one way or looking one way, and it's always been this way, well, guess what? If you're lacking confidence, that means that way may be a problem. And so don't be afraid to look at things differently. Understand that we all have things that we are and we have things that we are not. So improve your mindset. Look at things differently because I'm going to tell you, the positive people out there like us, we are looking at the world differently than the majority of you. And that makes me a hell of a lot more confident and a hell of a lot more happy. So those are my three. Hopefully that'll help you guys. I'm really fired up about this for a couple of reasons, but mostly because I just don't understand why so many people lack confidence because there's so many amazing, unbelievable, smart, amazing people out there that can achieve so much. You just got to let yourself believe it. So those are my three. Art, did I miss anything?
Tell us a bit about that book you were
Oh, yeah, the book of the week. I almost missed it, right? All right, guys, so we're going to start a new segment on episode 4 here because if you guys don't know, real quick, one of the ways that I've overcome the struggle for confidence is knowledge. And that didn't make it in this episode. We'll talk later. But a lot of the practice part comes from the knowledge on what to practice. So I made a commitment several years ago to dive in and really start reading. And the commitment started with a book a month, then turned to a book a week, and now is accelerated past that. So I have a library of things that I have read that I like to share with you guys. And one of the questions I get all the time is, well, give me a book to read, give me a book to read, give me a book to read, give me a book to read. And so we're going to start the book of the week where I'm going to link in the podcast notes and I'm going to share the book with you guys that I think that you should read. And the one here that I'm going to suggest, and by the way, I'm not doing any affiliate links, anything like that. I'm doing this because I want you guys to read. So if the author, anybody out there, if you guys catch this, this is coming from my library to you. And the book is called The Obstacle is the Way. I love this book. It's by Ryan Holiday. There's a couple of things about this book that woke me up. I'm going to be honest with you. Number one, the first time I read it, I realized I was in my 20s and he was younger than me. Somewhere in there, I read or heard how old he was, and that fired me up. I'm like, the guy that wrote this amazing book is younger than me. That fired me up. But second, what this shows you guys is that if you're going through struggles, if there's an obstacle, whether it's confidence, whether it's, something serious like a breakup in your life, or whether it's a failure in business, the obstacle is the way. Shows you that by shifting your mindset and looking at obstacles as opportunity, and it shows examples from ancient philosophers all the way through to modern times. So I recommend this book, especially those that may be going through a struggle. It's a really great one, and that's where I read the quote just a minute ago from. So we'll put that in the podcast notes. We'll put that in the email. So the last thing that I'll mention, guys, if you want to be a part of all of that, and if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything, please make sure to share the podcast. Make sure you leave us a review on iTunes, okay? Make sure that you subscribe to the email list. Everything that you want to do, you can find on thechrisdonaldson.com/project. So everything I just described, you can access at thechrisdonaldson.com/project. Because remember, there are many Chris Donaldsons across the web, but there's only one, the Chris Donaldson. So thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. I can't wait to see you next time for episode 5. And by the way, one last thing, if you're on the page for the project and you have a question you'd like to ask us, please make sure you submit that to me. You can email that to me from there, because we're going to try to do more Q&A episodes in the future. So if you got a question, send it away, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time on the Chris Donaldson Project.
Turn up, let's go.